Have you ever noticed that your life changes its scenery, but not its pattern? Different people, same wound. Different city, same anxiety. Different opportunity, same sabotage. Different relationship, same ending. At some point, coincidence stops being a convincing explanation. When the same emotional reality keeps wearing new faces, life is not attacking you randomly. It is showing you the state you keep carrying into every room. This video is not here to comfort the part of you that wants to blame the loop. It is here to show you where the loop is being generated and how to stop living the same life in different costumes. Here is what most people do when they finally feel the repetition. They move. They leave. They quit the job, end the relationship, relocate to a new city, find a new circle of friends, adopt a new morning routine, remodel the outer life from the outside in. And for a moment, it works. There is a window of relief, a brief sense of escape, the feeling that this time it will be different. But listen carefully. That window closes, and when it does, the same emotional weather returns, wearing the new location like a costume. The false strategy is the belief that the pattern lives in the circumstances. If that were true, changing the circumstances would end the pattern. But you have already tested this. You have already made the external changes, and here you are, watching this video, still recognizing the same loop. This is not a flaw in you. It is a misdiagnosis of where the problem lives. You have been treating the reflection as though it were the disease, and the mirror as though it were the wound. The outer world is not generating your experience. It is displaying it. The circumstances are not the cause. They are the response. Every new city, every new person, every new beginning that somehow ends the same way is not evidence that life is against you. It is evidence that something deeper than your conscious decisions is still broadcasting the same signal. And until that signal changes, the display will not change. This is where most people lose their power. Not because they lack effort, but because they are applying effort to the wrong location. Before this video goes any further, I want you to do something that most people will not do. I want you to name the pattern. Not out loud, not in the comments yet, just inside. Go quiet for a moment and ask yourself honestly, what is the one experience that keeps finding me? Not the surface version of it, not the name of the person or the job or the situation, but the emotional core of it. Is it rejection? Is it the feeling of being almost there but never quite arriving? Is it conflict that always escalates the same way? Is it a love that always withdraws at the same moment? Is it financial pressure that returns no matter how hard you work? Name it. Hold it. Because the way you watch this video matters. If you watch it as a passive observer collecting interesting ideas, you will leave with a full mind and an unchanged life. But if you watch it as a self-investigation, if you hold your pattern in awareness as each principle lands, something different becomes possible. The teaching does not transform the abstract student. It transforms the person who is willing to recognize themselves in the mirror. And that is exactly what this video is asking you to do. The invitation is this: carry that pattern with you as you listen. Every time something lands, ask yourself, where does this live in me? Not as judgment, not as shame, but as honest internal archaeology. This is not about blaming yourself for the loop. This is about locating the lever that actually controls it. And that lever, as you are about to discover, has never been outside you. So make the commitment now, not to finish the video, though I hope you do. Make the commitment to look honestly at what is being reflected back at you. The discomfort you feel when something here hits close to reality is not a signal to retreat. It is a signal that you are standing near the truth. And that is exactly where change begins. Let us look at this closely, because the pattern is more precise than most people realize. It does not repeat randomly. It repeats with extraordinary consistency in the emotional register, even when the outer details shift. The person who keeps experiencing abandonment does not always lose the same kind of person. Sometimes it is a romantic partner. Sometimes it is a friend. Sometimes it is an opportunity that seemed secure and then disappeared. The face changes, the industry changes, the decade changes, but the emotional landing is identical, the same hollow feeling, the same proof that people leave, the same confirmation that staying was naive. This precision is important. The repetition is not chaotic, it is almost surgical. The person who keeps encountering financial scarcity does not just happen to live in difficult economic conditions. They find scarcity in seasons of abundance. They lose money after gaining it. They attract the expensive emergency at the exact moment of forward movement. The person who keeps experiencing conflict finds it in peaceful environments. They find it with gentle people. They find it in situations that had no structural reason to produce it. The pattern does not wait for permission from the circumstances. It generates the circumstances. And then there is the subtler version, self-sabotage. This one is particularly painful because it removes the external excuse. There is no villain to blame, no sudden loss of luck, no betrayal from outside. The viewer watches themselves make the choice that undoes everything, and they cannot fully explain why. The application was not submitted. The conversation was started that could not be taken back. The investment was withdrawn at the exact wrong moment. The relationship was ended not because it was bad, but because something inside could not tolerate it continuing. Watch what happens inside you as you hear this. Because if any of these are landing, it is not an accident. Anxiety is another form of the loop that deserves its own recognition. Not anxiety about a specific threatening situation, but anxiety that migrates. When one fear is resolved, another rises to take its place. The anxious mind does not lack things to fear. It generates fear the way a factory generates product. A new situation arises, a new threat emerges from within, and the nervous system treats the present as though it were a memory of danger. This is not weakness. This is a programmed response operating exactly as it was installed. But the installation point is not the outer world. The outer world simply provides the next costume. The deepest version of the pattern is the one that feels most like destiny. When the loop has repeated enough times, it stops feeling like a pattern and starts feeling like identity. I am the kind of person this happens to. I always end up here. This is just how life works for me. And once the loop becomes identity, it becomes self-fulfilling in the most profound sense. You are no longer repeating a pattern. You are living as the pattern. And the world, which is always listening, always obedient, always reflecting, responds accordingly. Here is a reframing that may be difficult to receive, but I ask you to stay with it. The pain is not the problem. The pain is the evidence. Every time the loop completes, every time the wound returns under a new name, something is being revealed. Not something cruel, not something designed to destroy you, but something precise. The recurring experience is showing you, with extraordinary accuracy, the inner state that is generating it. The pain is the mirror speaking, and the mirror does not lie. This is a significant shift from how most people relate to their suffering. Most people treat pain as proof that life is unfair, that the world is dangerous, that they are unlucky, that something external is working against them. And that interpretation has a particular comfort in it, because it places the cause outside, which means the solution must also be outside, which means the viewer remains a passenger waiting for the road to change. But here is the cost of that comfort. It removes your access to the actual lever. If the cause is out there, you can only wait. If the cause is in here, you can act. Repeated pain is evidence of a repeated identity. Not the identity you consciously claim, not the self-concept you would describe to a stranger. The identity beneath that, the emotional assumption running underneath every hope, every attempt, every affirmation. The assumption that says, this is what I expect, this is what feels familiar, this is what I unconsciously know how to navigate, even if navigating it is devastating. The subconscious does not pursue what is pleasant, it pursues what is known. And known pain is more powerful than unknown peace. Think of it this way. The subconscious mind is not a villain. It is a system. It is executing instructions based on what has been rehearsed, confirmed, and emotionally reinforced over years. If rejection was the central emotional experience of your formative period, the subconscious does not grieve rejection. It watches for it, prepares for it, and in ways that are invisible to the conscious mind, begins to recreate the conditions that confirm it. Not because you want to suffer, but because the system is doing exactly what systems do. It is running its program. The person who keeps attracting partners who eventually withdraw did not attract a series of cold people by chance. They entered each relationship with an underlying assumption about how love behaves. They brought to the relationship a subconscious emotional posture, a way of interpreting ambiguity, a set of sensitivities shaped by old wounds, and those postures sent signals that the environment responded to. The cold partner did not appear from nowhere. The pattern inside the viewer found resonance with the pattern outside. And when that relationship ended the same way as the last one, the subconscious recorded the confirmation. See, I knew this was how it goes. This is not about blaming yourself for the pain. Let that be absolutely clear. What happened to you, what formed the wound in the first place, may have been something you had no control over. You did not choose the family system that shaped your assumptions. You did not choose the early losses that taught you what to expect from love, money, safety, or belonging. But here's the shift that changes everything. Responsibility is not blame. Responsibility is not punishment. Responsibility is the recognition that the state producing the pattern is a state that lives inside you, and anything that lives inside you is something you have access to. This is not the door to shame. This is the door out. If what you have heard so far is true, and I want you to hold it as a working hypothesis rather than a conclusion, then a very specific question becomes unavoidable. If the mirror is responding to an inner state, and if that inner state is generating the repetition, then the question is no longer, how do I change the people around me? How do I find better circumstances? How do I finally catch a break? The question becomes something far more precise. What inner state is life obeying right now? Not the state you want to be in. Not the state you believe you are in when you are feeling hopeful. Not the state you perform in public. The state that is actually running underneath. The emotional assumption operating beneath the level of conscious intention. Because there is a gap in most people between what they consciously want and what they subconsciously expect. And that gap is where the loop lives. You can want something completely and honestly with your conscious mind, while your deeper identity braces for the opposite. And the world does not respond to the want. It responds to the expectation. This is the opening that most people miss. They approach the outer world as the obstacle. They study the circumstances, analyze the other people, research the strategies, optimize the behavior, and wonder why the result keeps landing in the same emotional register. What they are not examining is the signal being broadcast from within, the instruction being given to the mirror, the assumption sitting at the foundation of every action, every interpretation, every relationship they enter, and every opportunity they pursue. That assumption is quiet. It does not announce itself, but it is in charge. And this raises a question that I want you to carry into the next section of this video, because the answer is going to require something more than information. It is going to require recognition. The question is this: if your life right now is a mirror, and if that mirror is displaying an inner state with perfect accuracy, what is the state it is showing you? Not what you wish it were showing you, not what you believe it should look like. What is it actually showing you? Hold that question. Do not rush to answer it. The next part of this video is going to help you see it more clearly than you may have ever been willing to look before. There is a reason this question feels uncomfortable, and the discomfort is actually the signal you have been waiting for. Because the pattern cannot be interrupted at the level of circumstances. It cannot be interrupted by a better strategy, a new location, a more determined effort, or a more disciplined routine. It can only be interrupted at the level where it begins. And that level is the one most people spend their entire lives avoiding. We are going there now. The central principle of everything that follows is this: your inner state is the blueprint behind your recurring circumstances, not a contributing factor, not one of several inputs. The blueprint, the source code from which the display is being generated. This is a strong claim, and it deserves to be unpacked carefully, because misunderstanding it leads either to dismissal or to a distorted sense of guilt. Neither response serves you. So, let us look at this precisely. What is meant by inner state? It is not your mood on a given morning. It is not the emotion you feel after watching a beautiful sunset. It is the deep emotional assumption about what is true about you, about life, about what you deserve, about what is available to you, and about what inevitably happens to people like you. This assumption is not always conscious. In fact, the most powerful assumptions operate below the threshold of awareness. They are the emotional weather of your inner world, so constant, so familiar, that you experience them not as assumptions at all, but as facts about reality. Here is where assumption connects to repetition. Every assumption generates a corresponding emotional posture. That posture shapes how you perceive incoming information, how you interpret ambiguous signals, how you behave under pressure, and how the nervous system responds to opportunity and threat. A person who carries the deep assumption that they are fundamentally not enough will interpret a neutral glance as disapproval, will hear ambiguous feedback as rejection, will shrink at the moment of visibility, and will often create the exact outcome that confirms the assumption. Not because the assumption was correct, because the assumption was obeyed. Neville Goddard described this mechanism with striking directness when he taught that assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. What he was pointing to was not magical thinking. He was pointing to a psychological and spiritual reality that modern understanding of the subconscious has confirmed from a different angle. The assumption does not wait to be proven before it influences behavior. The assumption shapes behavior first, and behavior produces evidence second. By the time the evidence appears, most people have forgotten that the assumption came before it. And then there is what might be called emotional loyalty. This is one of the most underappreciated engines of repetition. Emotional loyalty is the phenomenon where the subconscious clings to a familiar emotional state, even when that state is painful, because the familiar is experienced as safe. The nervous system equates predictability with survival. An outcome that confirms a familiar wound, as painful as that wound is less threatening to the system than the genuine unknown of a different reality. So, the subconscious, without your conscious permission, gravitates toward the familiar emotional conclusion. It recreates the evidence for what it already knows. This is not a malfunction. This is the system working precisely as designed. But that design can be updated. Self-concept is the third layer of this blueprint. Self-concept is not just what you say about yourself. It is the felt sense of who you are and what you belong to. A person whose self-concept is organized around being overlooked will be overlooked, not because the world is cruel, but because the self-concept sends a signal that shapes the quality of attention, the level of assertion, the threshold for advocacy, and the unconscious selection of environments that confirm the concept. The self-concept and the circumstances are in constant conversation, and in that conversation, the self-concept speaks first. What this means in practical terms is that changing the circumstances without changing the blueprint is an incomplete operation. You are editing the display without touching the source code, and the source code, undisturbed, will reassert itself. The display will drift back toward the blueprint. This is not mystical language. This is what you have observed in your own life already. You have made external changes that did not hold. You have experienced relief that reverted. You have rebuilt something that collapsed again into the same shape. The shape was always the shape of the blueprint. The blueprint was always the inner state. This principle does not position you as a victim of your own mind. It positions you as the one with access to the root. If the state is being produced within you, it can be changed within you. Every pattern you have observed, every loop you have named, every repetition you have endured is ultimately rooted in a state you can locate, identify, and change. Not by fighting the outer world, by changing the source code, by revising the assumption, by upgrading the self-concept, by ending the emotional loyalty to a version of reality that was formed in a different chapter of your life and has been running unopposed ever since. The extraordinary thing about this principle is that it does not require the outer world's permission. The mirror does not get a vote about what it reflects. The circumstances do not have the authority to resist a genuinely changed inner state. This is the power that repetition has been quietly trying to return to you. Every loop that felt like punishment was actually a signal. The signal was always pointing to the same place, inward, to the state, to the blueprint, to the source code that the mirror has been obeying all along. Neville Goddard spent decades teaching one thing in many forms. He taught that consciousness is the only reality, and that the outer world is nothing more than the shadow cast by consciousness. He used the language of his time, biblical language, imaginative language, and the language of feeling and assumption. But the mechanism he described is precise. The state you occupy is the state the world reflects. Persist in a state, and the world will crystallize around it. Change the state, and the world, with no further effort on your part, must reorganize itself to match. This is not a passive teaching. Neville was not telling you to wait for the universe to deliver your desires while you do nothing. He was telling you to occupy the state of the wish fulfilled with such completeness that the world has no choice but to reflect it back. The inner act is the cause. The outer reorganization is the effect, and the sequence is always inner first, outer second, never the other way around. This is the reversal of everything the ordinary mind assumes about how reality works. Vadim Zeland, in the framework he called reality transurfing, approached the same mechanism from a different direction. He described what he called the mirror principle. The world, he taught, is a mirror that reflects your inner attitude toward it. If you approach the world with tension, the world reflects tension. If you approach with fear, the world reflects fear. If you approach with the settled confidence of someone who already belongs to the reality they desire, the world begins to reflect that. The mirror is not selective. It is not generous or cruel. It is obedient, and it responds not to what you say you want, but to what you actually broadcast. What both of these frameworks are pointing to is a single operational reality. The outer world is downstream from the inner world. This is not a metaphor in the poetic sense. It is a description of how consciousness functions. Your perception, your interpretation, your emotional posture, your automatic responses, your selection of what to notice, and your behavior under pressure are all shaped by the inner state. And all of those outputs together produce the pattern of experience you call your life. Change the inner state, and you change every single one of those outputs simultaneously. This is why inner work is the most efficient work. A Course in Miracles describes the outer world as a projection of the mind. Not an illusion in the sense that it does not exist, but an interpretation generated by the mind's existing beliefs. The mind does not passively receive reality. It actively projects meaning onto what it perceives. And the meaning it projects is always drawn from the reservoir of its existing assumptions, wounds, and self-concepts. Two people can stand in the same room and experience completely different realities. Not because the room is different, but because the projector they are each carrying is different. The outer world is the projected image. The inner state is the projector. What makes this teaching powerful rather than abstract is the implication it carries for repetition. If the outer world is the projected image, then the repeated experience is the repeated projection. The same emotional assumption is being projected onto each new face, each new opportunity, each new environment, and the image it produces is functionally the same, regardless of the outer details. You have seen this in your own life. You know what it is like to carry an old wound into a new situation and see the new situation begin to take the shape of the old wound. That is not coincidence. That is the projector doing exactly what projectors do. The practical translation of all three teachings is this: do not go to the outer world to fix the inner problem. Do not try to negotiate with the reflection to get it to show you something different. Do not keep adjusting the circumstances while the state remains unchanged. Instead, do the work where the work can actually produce results. Go to the state. Identify the assumption. Examine the self-concept. Locate the emotional loyalty that keeps pulling you back toward the familiar wound, and change it there, at the source, where it was created. Because that is the only place it can be genuinely undone. This is why the most effective inner work is not the most dramatic outer action. The most powerful thing a person can do is not the loudest declaration, the most aggressive strategy, or the most disciplined external practice. The most powerful thing a person can do is to shift the inner state with enough clarity and emotional conviction that the inner identity genuinely changes. When that happens, the outer world, which has no loyalty to the old pattern except the loyalty you gave it, begins its reorganization. The mirror does not resist a new face. It was never attached to the old one. It was only reflecting what was placed before it. The authority that all of these teachings are returning to you is the authority of the operant power. the one who acts, the one who decides what state to occupy, the one who selects the assumption to persist in, the one who chooses to remain loyal to a new identity even when the old evidence is still showing up in the outer world. That authority has never belonged to the circumstances. It has never belonged to the people around you, the economy, the timing, or the pattern. It belongs to the consciousness that is reading reality. It belongs to you. Imagine a corridor of mirrors. Not a single mirror on a wall, but a long, narrow corridor, lined on both sides from floor to ceiling, with mirrors that reflect in all directions. You are walking through this corridor, and everywhere you look, you see yourself reflected back. Every mirror you pass shows you the same image, because the image being reflected is the face you are walking with. The corridor is not creating your face, it is displaying it. Now imagine that the face you are walking with is not your physical face. It is your inner face. It is the emotional expression of your current state, your assumptions, your self-concept, your expectations, and the invisible posture you carry through every room of your life. And every mirror in the corridor, every person, every circumstance, every recurring experience, every unexpected arrival and departure is showing you that inner face with precision. The corridor is not your enemy. The mirrors are not attacking you. They are doing the only thing a mirror can do. They are reflecting what is placed before them. Most people walking through a mirror corridor and disliking what they see will try to rearrange the mirrors. They will tilt one, cover another, walk faster past a third. They will negotiate with the reflections. They will criticize the images. They will hope that if they find the right section of the corridor, the mirrors there will show them something different. But the image follows them, because the image is not in the mirrors. It is in the face they are carrying. And until the face changes, the corridor simply offers more reflections of the same. Here is what makes this metaphor precise for your situation. The corridor does not have to be this long. The loop does not have to continue indefinitely. The moment you change the inner face, the moment the state genuinely shifts, the assumption revises, the self-concept updates, every mirror from that point forward reflects the new face. Not gradually, not after a waiting period. The reflection is instant. The mirror has no memory. It has no preference. It has no investment in showing you the old image. It was never committed to the pattern. It was committed only to accuracy. But here is the part of the metaphor that most people miss. While you are walking through the corridor, you may not realize that you are the one generating the face. The face feels like simply your face. The emotional state feels like simply your emotional state. The assumptions feel like simply the truth. This is the central confusion. When the inner state is habitual enough, it stops feeling like a state and starts feeling like a description of reality. And that is exactly when the corridor becomes most powerful in its hold. Not because the mirrors are lying, but because you have forgotten that you are the one they are reflecting. The shift that this teaching is inviting is the shift of awareness from the mirrors to the face, from the outer display to the inner cause, from spending your energy on rearranging the reflections to genuinely examining and changing what you are bringing into the corridor. This is not a passive shift. It is one of the most demanding things a person can do because it requires looking honestly at the face you have been carrying, including the parts of it that were formed in pain, and choosing consciously to carry a different one. The good news, and this is real news rather than comfort, is that the corridor is not fixed. It is not permanent. It is not a sentence. It is a display system, and display systems respond to the input. Every person who has genuinely transformed their inner state has watched the corridor change. Not because they convinced the mirrors, not because they exhausted the old pattern into surrender, but because they changed what they brought into the corridor. The mirrors did the rest automatically. That is all they know how to do. So the question you must now carry is not, how do I change the mirrors? That question will exhaust you and leave you standing in the same corridor. The question that opens the door is, what face am I bringing into this corridor right now? What inner state, what assumption, what self-concept, what emotional expectation am I walking through these mirrors with? Because the moment you can see the face clearly, and this is the part of the video where everything starts to become actionable, you have access to something you did not have before. You have access to the cause, and the cause is where the change is made. There is a painful irony at the center of how most people try to escape their pattern. They try to escape it through a kind of emotional combat with the outer world. They fight the circumstances. They resist the people. They analyze every detail of what went wrong and develop strategies to prevent it from happening again. They pour enormous energy into managing, controlling, monitoring, and responding to the reflection. And all of that effort, no matter how sincere and exhausting it is, tends to deepen the loop rather than end it. Here is the mechanism. The emotional fuel behind most attempts to escape a pattern is fear. Fear that the pattern will repeat. Fear that the wound will return. Fear that the old story is still true. And fear, as an inner state, carries an embedded assumption. The assumption embedded in fear is that the threat is real and present. The nervous system does not distinguish between a memory of danger and an actual current danger. When you operate from fear of the old pattern, the subconscious registers not the desire to escape it, but the emotional reality of its presence. And the mirror responds to the emotional reality, not the conscious intention. This is why people who try hardest to escape poverty through anxious, fear-driven effort often recreate financial instability in new forms. This is why people who are most terrified of abandonment behave in ways that eventually drive others away. This is why people who are most determined never to repeat their parents' patterns find themselves, years later, living out a version of those patterns anyway. The fear of the pattern and the pattern itself share the same emotional register. And the subconscious, which is not listening to your desires but to your dominant emotional state, keeps executing the program that matches the state it is receiving. Look at this closely. When you are trying to change your life from a state of resistance, from a state of "this must not happen again," you are operating from within the pattern, not from above it. Resistance is a form of engagement. What you resist, you are in relationship with. What you are in relationship with emotionally, you are confirming as real and present. And the inner world does not understand negation in the way the conscious mind does. When the dominant emotional signal is the fear of the old wound, the inner world processes that as the wound is here, and the mirror reflects accordingly. This creates a loop within the loop. The person tries to escape the pattern through effort, born of fear. The fear keeps the emotional state tuned to the pattern's frequency. The outer world continues to reflect the pattern. The person interprets this as confirmation that they need to try even harder. More effort, more control, more monitoring of the outer world, more resistance, and more fear. This is not a lack of commitment. This is a misapplication of commitment to the wrong level of the problem. The effort is real. The determination is real. The suffering is real. But the location of the work is wrong. The ego has a particular investment in the external struggle. Because as long as the problem is out there, the ego remains the manager. It can analyze, strategize, protect, and predict. It can feel productive while producing nothing new. The ego does not like the alternative, which is turning inward and acknowledging that the source code needs revision. That revision requires a level of honesty that the ego finds threatening, because revising the source code means acknowledging that what was thought to be the truth of reality was actually a state, a program, an assumption. And the ego built its entire architecture on the assumption being true. What becomes necessary then is a reversal of the direction of effort. Not less effort, but redirected effort. Instead of pushing against the outer pattern, the work becomes the inner shift. And the inner shift begins not with fighting the old state, which is still engagement with it, but with something more precise. It begins with recognition, seeing the state for what it is, naming the assumption without judgment, observing the emotional loyalty without acting on it. And from that still point of clear recognition, choosing something different, not from fear, from a genuine new orientation toward who you are and what reality you belong to. There is a teaching embedded in the mirror metaphor that becomes essential here. You do not change the mirror by pushing against it. Pressing your hands against a mirror does not change what the mirror reflects. It only puts pressure on the surface. The reflection changes only when the face changes. In the same way, pushing against your outer reality, however understandable and however motivated by genuine pain, only puts pressure on the surface. The source code remains untouched, and the source code, patient and invisible, continues to generate the next iteration of the pattern, the next costume on the same loop. This is the place where responsibility becomes freedom rather than blame. Once you understand that the external struggle is not the path out, you stop having to fight the world. You stop having to manage every variable. You stop having to brace against every potential threat. You stop having to exhaust yourself trying to control what the mirror is showing. Instead, you turn to the one place where genuine change is not only possible, but immediately accessible. The inner state, the assumption, the self-concept, the source code. This is not a smaller field of action. This is the only field where the action actually changes anything. The interruption of the loop begins with one specific act, not a declaration, not a visualization, not an affirmation, not a dramatic moment of spiritual breakthrough. It begins with recognition, the ability to see the state clearly enough to call it what it is. When the old pattern is activating, when the familiar emotional weather is beginning to gather, when the nervous system is priming you for the same old response, the first act is to see it. To step back from automatic identification with it and say, I see this state. I know what this is. This is the old program running. This is not the truth about my life. This is what the old identity expects. This moment of recognition is more powerful than it may seem. Most people have lived inside their dominant emotional state so completely that they have never experienced it as a state at all. It just felt like how things are. To see the state as a state rather than as reality is the first genuine break in the loop. It creates a gap, and in that gap, the automatic execution of the old program is interrupted. Not eliminated yet, interrupted. An interruption is where the new sequence begins. The second movement is refusal, not the aggressive refusal of resistance, which, as we have just seen, keeps you in emotional relationship with the old pattern. This is a quieter, more deliberate refusal. It is the refusal of the old interpretation. When the circumstances present the familiar cue, the familiar emotional trigger, the familiar invitation to confirm the old assumption, you do not accept it. not by arguing with it, not by forcing a different feeling onto it, but by simply not giving it your agreement. Not today. This story is not the one I am telling anymore. Not because it is not familiar, but because familiar and true are not the same thing. The third movement is the selection of a new assumption. This is the moment where the inner operation becomes constructive rather than merely protective. After recognition and refusal, you face a choice that most people skip past. What do you assume instead? Not what do you wish for, not what you are trying to convince yourself of, but what assumption are you willing to consciously, deliberately occupy? This is what Neville meant by the state of the wish fulfilled. It is not pretending the outer world is different from what it is. It is choosing the inner orientation of someone for whom the desired reality is already the case. Choosing the assumption that carries the emotional signature of the answered question. The fourth movement is embodiment. The new assumption must be felt, not just thought. This is the difference between an intellectual exercise and a genuine state change. An intellectual exercise produces no signal. The subconscious does not respond to logic. It responds to feeling, to the emotional reality of a state. So the new assumption must be inhabited. What would it feel like to be the person for whom this pattern is over? Not hypothetically, in the body, in the nervous system, in the quality of the breath, the emotional tone of someone who has genuinely moved forward and is no longer looking back at the wound to see if it is still there. The fifth movement is consistency. The new state must be returned to, not with the rigidity of a performance, not with the anxiety of someone trying to maintain a pose, but with the quiet discipline of someone who has genuinely decided. Every time the outer world offers the old cue, every time the old pattern makes its pitch for re-engagement, you return to the new state, not as a battle, as a choice, the way you return to your own home when you have been away from it, with a sense of belonging, not with strain. The sixth movement is what could be called inner acting from the new identity. This is not performance for an audience. This is the inner behavioral shift that comes from genuinely inhabiting a new self-concept. A person who has genuinely revised their assumption about their own worth does not merely think differently. They move differently. They make requests differently. They interpret ambiguity differently. They set thresholds that did not exist before. Not as a strategy, but as a natural expression of who they now believe themselves to be. The inner work always produces an outer behavioral signature. And that behavioral signature is the new signal the environment begins responding to. The seventh movement is patience without regression. The outer world does not reorganize overnight. There is a delay between the inner shift and the visible evidence of the shift. During that delay, the old pattern may seem to persist. Old circumstances may maintain their current shape for a period. This is not proof that the inner work failed. It is simply the gap between the signal and the display catching up. Your commitment to the new state must not depend on immediate outer confirmation. Because if it does, you are still handing the authority back to the mirror. And the mirror cannot lead. The mirror can only follow. The eighth movement is gratitude from the fulfilled state. Not gratitude for something you do not yet have, performed as a kind of manipulation of the universe. Genuine gratitude that flows naturally from genuinely inhabiting the fulfilled state. The person who truly occupies the state of their desired reality is not desperate, not grasping, not performing contentment while internally bracing for disappointment. They are at rest. The gratitude of that rest is one of the clearest signals the subconscious can receive that the new state is real, not aspirational. And the mirror, faithful to the inner face, begins to reflect that rest back into the outer world. The ninth movement, and the one that completes the inner operation, is the willingness to release the old story entirely. Not to revise it, not to find a better version of it, not to heal it just enough to keep referencing it. To release it. The old pattern was generated by an old state. The old state was held in place by an old story. The old story was about who you were and what life did to people like you. Releasing the story is not about denying what happened. It is about recognizing that the story was never the truth of your identity. It was a narrative that the inner machinery built around a wound. And the wound can be acknowledged without the narrative being given permanent residence. Let the story go. The mirror does not need it, and neither do you. There is an objection that arises here so consistently that it would be a disservice to ignore it. After the inner work has begun, after the state has shifted, after the new assumption has been inhabited, the old pattern often returns, sometimes louder than before. A person decides they no longer belong to the story of rejection, and within days, something happens that looks and feels exactly like rejection. A person commits to occupying the state of financial sufficiency, and an unexpected expense arrives. A person resolves to end the anxiety loop, and the anxiety intensifies. And the immediate internal response is, see, it did not work. Nothing changes. This is just my life. Listen carefully to this. The return of the old pattern after the inner shift is not evidence of failure. It is one of the most misread signals in the entire territory of inner work. What is actually happening in those moments is that the system, newly disrupted, is reasserting the old program with increased urgency. This is a well-documented phenomenon in any process of genuine change. The old identity does not surrender quietly. It makes one final argument, and the argument sounds and feels exactly like proof that the change was an illusion. The test of the inner shift is not whether the old pattern makes another appearance. It is whether you identify with it when it does. There is a significant difference between seeing the old pattern arrive and being the old pattern. A person who has genuinely shifted their inner state can observe the old pattern returning and recognize it for what it is, an echo of the previous signal, a residual reflection that has not yet caught up with the new face. They do not collapse back into identification with it. They observe it. They note it. And they return to the new state. That return, repeated, is the consolidation of the shift. Sensory delay is the technical name for the gap between the inner shift and the outer reorganization. The world you are currently perceiving was, in a very real sense, generated by the state you occupied in the recent past. Perception is never fully instantaneous in its reflection of the deepest inner changes. There is a period of overlap where the new state is broadcasting and the old circumstances are still visible. During this period, the mirror appears to be showing the old face even as the new face is being established. This overlap is not contradiction. It is a timing phenomenon, and it passes. What determines whether you make it through the sensory delay is what you do during it. If you use the continued appearance of old circumstances as evidence that the inner work is not real, you are making a decision that reverses the shift. You are handing the authority back to the outer world. You are saying, in effect, that the mirror is the judge of the inner state, which is precisely the reversal that created the loop in the first place. The mirror is not the judge. The mirror is the display, and the display catches up to the source code. It always does. The practical instruction for navigating the sensory delay is simple, even if it is not easy. Continue to occupy the new state. When the old pattern shows up as a test, acknowledge it without engaging it emotionally. You can say internally, "I see this. This is the old echo. It does not belong to my new identity." And then return your attention, fully and without drama, to the state you have chosen. Not as a performance of certainty you do not feel, as an act of inner authority over what you give your agreement to. The echo will complete itself and fall silent. Echoes always do. They are not new sounds. They are the tail end of old ones. The final thing to understand about the testing period is that its intensity is often proportional to the depth of the shift being made. A surface-level change produces a surface-level test. A fundamental revision of self-concept, of what you expect from love, from life, from your own capacity, produces a test that feels equally fundamental. This is not the universe being cruel. It is the system recalibrating. And every person who has made a genuine inner shift and stayed with it through the testing period has found the same thing on the other side. The old pattern lost its grip, not because the world suddenly cooperated, but because the inner state no longer provided the resonance the pattern needed to reproduce itself. Let us bring together what this video has revealed, because the architecture of what you have heard matters as much as any single piece of it. You began here recognizing the pattern, the same wound in different costumes, the same emotional weather in different locations, the same ending wearing a new face. And the first honest acknowledgement this video asked you to make was that changing the outer life while preserving the inner state is not a solution. It is a relocation of the same loop. The evidence that followed showed you why the pain repeats, not because of fate, not because of bad luck, not because you are broken, but because a repeated inner state generates repeated outer evidence. The assumption beneath your conscious desire, the emotional loyalty to familiar suffering, the self-concept that expects a particular kind of life. These are the forces that shape the pattern. And because they operate below the threshold of conscious intention, they persist through every outer change you make until they are addressed directly. The central principle gave you the location of the real work. The inner state is the blueprint. The assumption is the instruction. The self-concept is the signal the mirror is reading. And the mirror, as every spiritual teaching worth taking seriously has confirmed from a different angle, obeys the inner state with perfect accuracy. Neville Goddard called it the state of the wish fulfilled. Vadim Zayland called it the mirror principle. A Course in Miracles called the outer world a projection of the mind. The language differs. The mechanism is the same. Inner first, outer second, always. The mirror corridor showed you how the pattern sustains itself. You have been walking through a corridor of reflections with the same inner face, and every mirror has dutifully shown you that face. The mirrors were never the problem. They were never attached to the old image. They have no loyalty to the pattern. The moment the face changes, the corridor changes. Not after a long waiting period, not after convincing the mirrors one by one, but immediately, because the mirror has no alternative. Reflecting is all it does. The inner operation gave you the sequence: recognition of the state, refusal of the old interpretation, selection of the new assumption, embodiment of the new state, consistency of return, action from the new identity, patience through the sensory delay, gratitude from the fulfilled state, and finally, the release of the old story. Not as a 9-step program to perform mechanically, but as a living sequence that unfolds from a genuine inner decision. And the testing period told you what to expect when the old pattern returns after the shift. It told you that the return is not failure. It is the echo of the old signal completing itself. And it told you that what matters in that moment is not whether the old pattern shows up, but whether you identify with it when it does. The person who can see the echo without becoming the echo has genuinely crossed the threshold. The loop is not their identity anymore. It is simply an old sound fading out. And the new state, held with quiet authority, is already generating the next reflection. You have now heard the architecture of the loop and the architecture of the exit. But hearing is not the same as claiming, and claiming is what this moment is about. Not for the video's sake, not for the algorithm, not for anyone watching, but for yourself. Because there is something that happens when you put a new identity into language with intention. The subconscious responds to declaration. Not the empty declaration of a forced affirmation, but the declaration that arises from genuine recognition. And you have just spent the better part of this video in genuine recognition. So, here's the invitation. In the comments of this video, I want you to write a single sentence. One sentence that names the identity you are choosing from this point forward. Not an identity you are hoping to convince yourself of. Not a performance. The identity that, after everything you have heard, feels like the true direction. Something like, I am the one who changes the mirror from within, or the loop ends with me, or I no longer chase the reflection, I return to the cause, or whatever version of that truth lands most honestly for you. Write it in the first person. Write it in the present tense. Write it as though it is already the case. Because at the level of inner decision, it already is. Why does this matter? Because the comment is not for the audience. It is for you. It is the act of placing the new assumption into language in a public space, which is one of the oldest forms of inner commitment. Every tradition that has ever taken inner transformation seriously has understood the power of declaration. Not declaration as performance, but declaration as orientation. You are orienting your inner machinery toward a new set of instructions. And the subconscious, which is always listening for what you are committed to, registers the declaration and begins its reorganization accordingly. If you read this comment back in a week, in a month, in a year, you will have a record of the moment you decided. Not the moment you hoped, not the moment you tried, but the moment you decided. And decision, genuine inner decision, is the hinge on which everything else turns. The mirror does not wait for you to be ready. It does not wait for the circumstances to confirm the new state. It responds the moment the state genuinely changes. And the declaration in the comments, if it comes from a place of real inner shift, is one of the marks of that change. The community that gathers in the comments of this channel is not here by accident. These are people who have recognized the same loop and have chosen to take the same kind of responsibility for it. When you post your identity statement, you are joining that recognition. You are not alone in having lived the pattern. You are not alone in choosing something different. And there is something quietly powerful about seeing your own declaration sitting alongside the declarations of others who have made the same turn. It creates a field of shared inner authority. And inner authority is the only kind that actually changes the mirror. So do not scroll past this moment. Do not save the thought for later. The impulse to engage is itself the new state asking to be expressed. Write the sentence. Name the identity. Claim the inner cause. The mirror is already listening. You came to this video with a pattern. Different people, same wound. Different city, same anxiety. Different opportunity, same sabotage. Different relationship, same ending. And perhaps for the first time, you are leaving it not with a new strategy for managing the loop, but with a clear understanding of where the loop is being generated. The scenery was always changing. The state was always the same. And now you know what to change. Not the scenery, the source code. The mirror was never your enemy. Every repetition that felt like punishment was a signal pointing to the same place, inward, to the assumption, to the self-concept, to the inner state that the outer world has been obeying with perfect and patient accuracy. You were never trapped by circumstances. You were held in place by an inner identity that the circumstances were faithfully reflecting. And the moment that identity changes, the corridor of mirrors changes with it. Not because you earned it, because that is how mirrors work. There is something that happens after this understanding lands genuinely. The old pattern does not disappear overnight, but it loses its authority. You can see it as what it is, an echo, a residual reflection, the tail end of an old signal, and you can return with increasing ease and decreasing drama to the new state. Each return is a confirmation of the new identity. Each refusal of the old story is a withdrawal of the power that kept the loop alive. The loop does not end with a dramatic finale. It ends with a quiet, cumulative series of inner choices that slowly starve it of the fuel it needed to keep repeating. If this teaching has opened something in you, and I believe it has, there is a next layer waiting. Because what you have heard today is the architecture of the loop and the mechanics of the exit. But there is a deeper question underneath all of it. The question of who is doing the observing. The question of the one who sees the state and chooses the new assumption. The question of identity at its most fundamental level. That is the territory the next video will take you into. Subscribe and stay close. The inner work deepens from here, and the next doorway is closer than you think.